Okay, 6 o'clock. Thank you everyone for attending. I'd like to call the April 6, 2021 board meeting to order. This meeting of the Sugar Grove Village Board will be held as outlined in Public Act 101-0640, which waives the Open Meetings Act requirement that a physical quorum of elected officials be present to hold a public meeting in the event of a public health disaster declaration and a determination by the village president. Governor Pritzker issued a statewide disaster declaration on March 5th, 2021, and in response, President Sean Michaels determined that an in-person meeting is not practical or prudent at this time. With that said, Rick Untitled, would you please lead us in the pledge?
Yes. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Rick. Roll call, please, Allison.
Trustee Walter?
Here.
Trustee Lundy?
Here.
Trustee Conan?
Here.
Trustee Montalto?
Here.
Trustee Heron?
Here.
Trustee Cook?
Here.
President Michaels?
Here. Okay, we have a quorum. I'd like to open up the public hearing for the fiscal year 2021-2022 budget. Again, there's only Jim Ecker here in public. I don't know if we've received any emails or comments.
We have not received any emails through the public comment email address. There are 2 attendees. One, I believe, is for the solar panels, but Mr. Flint is on, and I'm not sure if he would like to speak at this time, but if Tim or Lawrence would like to, you can use the raise your hand function.
Would you like to make a comment regarding the public hearing on the budget? Okay, hearing none. Close that portion. No appointments or presentations. Any public comments on items scheduled for action? Under tonight's consent agenda, we have approval of the minutes for March 16th, approval of the vouchers, proclamation for Arbor Day, resolution amending water and sewer rates and fees, resolution amending refuse rates, resolution setting vehicle use fees, resolution setting zoning, subdivision, and building permit fees, resolution authorizing the new home fee, resolution approving VH and PD, Village Hall, and Police Department flooring. Under general business, we'll discuss awarding the construction contract for the 2021 road program and an ordinance adopting the 2021-2022 budget. Any public comments? Mr. Flint or Mr. Papp? Okay. Hearing none, close that portion. Can I get a motion to approve the consent agenda?
I'll make the motion.
Trustee Cook. Trustee Heron, second. Any requests to remove an item from the agenda or from the consent agenda? Hearing none, Allison, roll call, please.
Trustee Cook?
Aye.
Trustee Heron?
Aye.
Trustee Lundy?
Aye.
Trustee Conan?
Aye.
Trustee Montalto?
Aye.
Trustee Walter?
Aye.
Okay, motion carries. Thank you. Okay, next on the agenda is a resolution awarding the construction contract for the 2021 road program. May I get a motion to approve it?
I'll make the motion.
Second.
Okay, by Trustee Heron. Tony?
Yes, this was previously discussed at the January 19th board meeting. It was put out to bids, and the bids were open, and it came in $64,000 below the engineer's estimate. the construction cost of $447,000. We have, with those extra funds, we have two options. We look in the area to provide an option if we want to add to the program, because it has to be within the immediate area. Otherwise, there's mobilization costs. Working with the EEI, we did narrow it down to the west side of Park Avenue from 47 going west to the beginning of Windsor West for $65,000 to $70,000. So if the board was interested in adding on to the current project based on the bid, we could do that. Or the second option would be just to move the funds forward into next year's program. That would be after the completion of the CMAP pavement management program. They should start working on that this month. So those would be the two options that I would like some direction if the board is interested in option one or option two.
I would promote option one. The one thing that never seems to happen is road construction goes down, it seems to go up. And this is a project that's going to be needed in the future anyways. We might even get better bids since we're doing it this year. It doesn't sound like there's a lot of commercial paving going on, so maybe we'll get good pricing on this option as well.
Right, that would be to include it with the current contract.
Yeah, I think that's a good idea too, because one of the things we got to be concerned about is gas prices going up. Whenever gas prices go up, blacktop goes up too. So they're talking $4 a gallon gas again this summer. So I would jump on it while we can.
I would agree.
Yeah, gas,
I agree.
materials.
Okay, good. Then could we have Trustee Montalto and Trustee Herron amend their motions to include option one?
I'll amend my motion to include that.
And I'll amend my second.
Okay. Any further discussion?
I was just curious, when is that?
Well, Trustee Walter, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, no, just real quick. I was just curious when that portion of Park was slated to be repaved. Was it next year or a couple years out or greater? I was just curious.
We don't have anything in the program. It's we'll have that information after this pavement assessment based on the visual inspection that EEI and staff had made. That is why it is included, because it is qualified for resurfacing.
Okay.
That's the exact same question I was going to ask. So.
And it's probably that short of a distance where it fits into the budget as well with extra that we have in favorable bids.
Yeah.
Well, good. Okay. Any other discussion? Hearing none, roll call please, Allison.
Trustee Montalto?
Aye.
Trustee Herron?
Aye.
Trustee Conan?
Aye.
Trustee Walter?
Aye.
Trustee Lindy?
Aye.
Trustee Cook?
Aye. Okay, motion carries. Thank you.
Thank you.
May I get a motion to approve an ordinance adopting the fiscal year 2021-2022 budget?
I'll make that motion.
I'll second it.
Okay. Discussion, Matt?
Yep. So we have now discussed the budget at 3 separate workshops. So this budget does include all of those changes that we discussed. Since the last meeting, there were some discussions on making some different projections and kind of shifting some expenses around. So those are outlined. One, the lobbyist, we did put it in for a month again as directed by the board, and 2 months in the following year. Snow and ice control was the main one. That was one that we did get good numbers. We have paid them. If you noticed in the vouchers today, was those invoices with the corrections. So what that does is with the salt purchase, the chloride that we purchased, and we did leave in $5,000 in case there was another snowstorm, and I talked with Brad about this, and if we were to order on another snowstorm, it would be 22 tons that we would have to order. So we did leave 22 tons is 1 truckload. So you have to order at a minimum. So we did add 2 truckloads in as just a buffer in case there was something that happened. So that did create in the budget a surplus of $80,000 for the current fiscal year. And that will be something that we'll be looking for direction from the board on if we want to transfer out for future specific uses, or it can remain in the fund balance.
Can I put in my 2 cents with that? I wouldn't mind seeing that 80,000 get moved into general infrastructure.
Okay.
Is that account, Matt, that would go to the infrastructure or capital projects fund?
Yeah, and that's the direction is if you wanted to move towards the future, I guess, road program, it would be the capital infrastructure fund that would be transferred to. That's the one we're currently doing the 350,000. So it would be added to that transfer to that fund.
That would be my intention, but I'd like to propose.
Can you leave it just in the general fund? And if we find that next year for our road program, we need to move additional dollars over at that time, you can move them from the general fund at that time?
We are able to. You can leave it in. It'll become fund balance, which will show up in the audit. And in the future, if you need to add more funds to your capital infrastructure fund for road program, it is as easy as doing a resolution, doing a permanent transfer from the general fund to general capital infrastructure from the reserves. So it can be in there if it needs to be and be transferred next year, even if it is not budgeted. But it can be moved this year too. It just depends, but yes, it can be.
But if we earmark it and put it into the infrastructure fund, can we pull it back out if we wanted to?
Yes.
Okay.
That same idea. Sorry, Sean.
Well, oh, no, that's fine. What would happen, Jen, is that if we do the transfers here and we transfer 80,000, you would see a deficit of, let's say, our anticipated balances or budget surplus is 20,000 this year. You move that 80,000 out, you're going to show a deficit of 60,000 if you do it next year. If we do it this year while we have a surplus, you don't show a deficit at the end of it.
That wasn't my understanding. I thought, and Matt, please correct me if I'm wrong, but I thought that you could do it without it actually showing as a deficit.
So if you were to pass the resolution doing a permanent transfer from fund balance of the general fund to the general capital, it wouldn't show as an expense in your budget. It would show on the balance sheet when the audit is completed. So initially, when you see your budget come through with projections and everything, you wouldn't see the 80,000 or whatever that dollar amount is. You would see it on the audit as just a transfer between fund balances. It wouldn't show up as a due to, due from or anything because you are going to be passing a resolution as a permanent transfer, not a loan. So it would not show up on the budget as far as expenses or revenues. It would show on the audit as a fund balance transfer.
But if we did the transfer, not during the audit, we did it during the fiscal year, that would show up as an expense, would it not? Like, we're showing it.
If you did it during the year, it would still show up on the audit because those are ordinances that the auditors will pull at the end of the year when they do it and do a fund balance adjustment, not a expense or revenue adjustment. So it doesn't matter when you do that. If you're doing the formal resolution approved by the board to transfer, it will not show up as a revenue and expense. It'll just be a fund balance transfer on the audit.
Yeah, if I can, Sean, I was right where you're at. I mean, that's kind of the way I've been, that's the way I understood it for 30 years of doing this. And then with the very recently with Matt's conversations with the auditors, the first that I was aware of this resolution concept where it doesn't show up as a expense. And yeah, so I was right where you are. So don't feel alone on that one. 'Cause that was my same response was, wait.
I love that resolution idea. That's a good way to do it.
So,
Yeah, if you think
So
about
I
it,
would,
it's a little bit different. It's just like when we did the TIF interfund, that was a temporary loan. This would be a permanent transfer. So same type of resolution, except this is just permanently being moved. So it won't show up as a due to another fund from the audit because you're making a permanent transfer.
But Ted's recommendation is to do the transfer. We'll go through the rest of Matt's memo and then come back and discuss Ted's suggestion.
Okay. One of the changes is in MFT was for projections. We did get the third payment of the rebuild money, which was earlier than we anticipated. So we've received 3 of 6 payments. So we're anticipating 2 more in the next fiscal year and then the final one the year after. We did make the transfer and change and add the $150,000 additional into engineering for next year once that map payment analysis complete. So the final 2 is a reimbursement / a final invoice, which we've received for 88 and 47s interchange. The total invoice was $240. The reimbursement from Crown is $120, which is 50%. And then that'll complete that project we just received from the tollway. So that will pay off that final bill for 47 and 88. So those were the only changes that were made from the last meeting to this one, based through discussion. So if we want to go back to what to do with the extra 80,000, we can, just to get, we have that. The recommendation from Trustee Cook is to transfer, just some discussion or consensus on what to do with that fund.
We could have Trustee Montalto and Trustee Herron modify their motion to include that.
well, I heard Trustee Cook say he wants to move it to infrastructure, but I'm not quite sure everybody else has agreed to do that.
Right, let's amend the motion, then we can discuss it.
I would have to amend mine to do that.
Yes.
Motion,
Okay.
I'm okay with that.
and I would amend my second.
Okay. Discussion.
If we can move it around, if we can bring it back, if we need it for something else, that's fine. It's fine with me to move it now. If something comes up to where we need that money back, if it's not going to cause us any headache to do it later, I'm fine with moving it now.
We still have we have about 9% surplus of our expenses, so about $500,000 over our 25% reserve requirement. So we still have roughly $500,000 if there's an emergency showing.
The reason I'm suggesting it goes to the road program is because we're always going to need more money there. We're always going to use it. And I think it's clear to do it this way now.
And if there's something where we show it as a balance in that account when Michelle goes through or EEI does their presentation, there's something else that we can get out of that they know up front. I think that's a good idea.
Yeah, it was last meeting, I think we showed a balance. Was it this account? About $2.5 million.
That's correct.
So that's a fund balance that we can start, every staff can start using to work with some of these road projects.
Yeah, because we usually come up 50% of what they show, right? Like we usually got about half the money to do everything that needs to be done. So we can chip away at that. I think that's a good idea.
Yeah, I think Tony alluded to it earlier that I think we have 3 subdivisions that need about $1 million each.
Heidi knows.
And that's not including the new bridge on Phase Lane. So, yeah, it's a huge pile of Okay. Was there any other discussion on the budget? Man, you did a good job working with all the staff members. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay. Any other discussion on the budget? Okay, so we have a motion to approve it with the transfer of the 80,000 into the capital. Roll call, please, Allison.
Trustee Montalto?
Aye.
Trustee Heron?
Aye.
Trustee Walter?
Aye.
Trustee Lendy?
Aye.
Trustee Cook?
Aye.
Trustee Conan?
Okay. Next is the solar garden special use. If you'll excuse me for a second, I'm going to turn on the podium speaker so Jim can talk into that. Do you want to use this one? Sure. Can I ask you here? Pardon me? I was going to ask you to get here. Here, you can step right up here. And then, am I on camera here?
Your audio's on. I don't see, your camera is still pointing at your chair, but the audio we can hear.
Okay. Let me turn on this. Good.
We're good?
Yep.
Okay. I don't know if it's see me or they just go, there we go. All right. So, hey, good afternoon, everybody. Thank you very much for allowing me to come in and make just a couple comments on the solar garden. First, Tim,
So,
Could you maybe mute your microphone?
right. Sean, can you mute your device, your computer? This is what it's like to teach second grade remotely. So I've had this problem before with twins sitting next to each other.
Okay. Do a sound check here.
Oh, here it is.
Got some feedback.
Sean,
Can you hear me?
your microphone, Sean.
Sean, I think your microphone.
I have speakers on.
I think, Allison, you can do it from your computer, can't you, as the host?
Does it work? Okay.
I just
Everybody hear
turned-
me okay?
Yeah, okay.
Yes.
We can, yeah.
All right. Thanks again, everybody, for allowing me to come in and just say a couple words about the discussion tonight. So I'm sure Walter will kick it off as far as what the Planning Commission talked about the other day. And Tim's on, and I really appreciated Tim's comment the other night. I'm glad he's bringing business to the village. It's just a couple things that I wanted to talk a little bit about. I'm kind of passionate about the solar. I helped write some of the solar variances, and I think we have some loopholes we probably need to talk about in the future, and that's about front-facing the businesses, and we can talk about that a little time later. Again, the Planning Commission, we talked about it, and we basically made some changes or suggested some changes to not have the panels on the front of the building due to the aesthetics. But one of the things that was brought up is the 5-foot variance. So just wanted to talk about that. When we went through the findings of fact, we never really did establish it, that they need this 5 feet. They can still participate in the solar garden or the community solar program. And one of the things that happens is once you accept it, it's going to become the standard. Okay, so that's just one thing I really wanted to bring up is the 5 foot, when we talked about it, was more for safety and for access when you get up there and do that. But I'll allow your discretion on that. Again, we talked about it at the Planning Commission, and they voted to go ahead and allow the 1 foot. But I just again wanted to caution, whatever we accept becomes the standard. So this project is going to be in the middle of our commercial district. And so it really sends a statement to the community. It's basically a double-edged sword. So the first thing is we support green energy, we support new technology. But when you look at the designs, if you go through with the designs, this is really taken to the extreme. On every surface, every direction on the roof itself, Again, we support it. I believe we support it. New technology, green energy, but I think we could do it again on a smaller scale. And we did suggest that, and I hope that the petitioner agrees with that about removing some of the panels from the front. So with new technology is coming. Okay, again, I mentioned before wind, flywheel, hydrogen cell technology, battery storage. Now, this is one thing that you need to know is that this project does not include any storage. So as long as the sun is out, it'll produce energy. But they're not going to be storing it. It's not for emergency backup. And ComEd already has to serve the load. ComEd is what's called a provider of last resorts, or POLR. So they design the system that if the bank operates or doesn't operate, they already supply the electricity. So they're not going to redesign the system because this goes in. Okay. So that's just one thing. I looked at a new company today called SolarFit, and they have it's basically like a tin roof on a machine shed where you have the slats that go up and down. That's the whole panel. It goes from the top of the ridge down to the gutter. So those are coming, again, new technology. So, we really, we just need to be kind of concerned, or we don't want to perceive to only allow solar to be on the roofs. Again, other new technologies coming. But again, the aesthetics over time, they do discolor, which will happen. I think I told you in the last discussion, I was part of some industry standards. So solar panels will still be very effective over their lifetime. Now, this project is designed to go 30 years. So again, we're going to be looking at it for 30 years. Okay. So again, this extreme that's going. So they're still about 95% effective. They will discolor. Even when they discolor, they still will be operating and functional. Okay. And what I said last time, solar panels are kind of like satellite dishes, sheds, and swimming pools. They all have their purpose, but they really don't belong in the front of homes or businesses. Okay. We did do a lot to protect that with the architectural. So again, like I said, we supported it. We had some things, but one thing I really wish I would have came back on at the Planning Commission that I didn't, and I'll suggest now, is if the building ever becomes vacant, then have this operating system removed. Don't let it sit there and continue, as maintenance on the facility. I'm looking at the Chase Bank in front of Woodman's. It's been sitting vacant for a long time, and people who look at it, those in the real estate, sometimes people look at solar as a risk more than a reward. Okay. And we don't want to challenge that either if that sits right in the middle of our commercial district. Okay. So again, I'm supporting solar. I don't support it on the buildings, but on the sides, that's fine. And as far as the setbacks, again, I don't think I would give the setback. That's my own personal opinion. I voted no, but I'll leave it up to you, that discretion. And I provided some pictures of Sheffield Bank. I don't know if you saw those or not, but when they put those panels on, they went over the ridges. They actually, the points of go over the ridges. They put a solar array in the back of the bank, and they're discolored already. And then when I was in Tucson a couple weeks ago, a Chase Bank did have a solar system on it. So they're out there, you can get it. But again, we're looking at 30 years, and with the weather variants, our hailstorms, our snow, okay, that type of thing. But so those are just kind of some brief comments, and I appreciate all your time. And I'll hang around in case you have any other questions, but thank you.
Thank you, Jim.
Thanks.
Okay. There we go. Excuse me.
Right down there, speaker.
Hey, Jim.
Yes.
Ryan Walter, oops, shoot. I'll ask you a question, and when you get that. I was listening to the Planning Commission meeting, and I know the petitioner, they weren't too sure on the total amount of energy they actually needed. So that was one of the things with the variances. We weren't sure if the variances were even needed to power their entire operation, because they didn't have the wattage or whatever energy consumption that they would need. That wasn't clear. So I didn't know if they've provided anything further on that.
So I think, Tim, please correct me if I'm wrong, at that time they did not know their load. I believe they applied for around 40 kilowatts. So one thing about a solar system, when you put it up there, the panels themselves are measured in DC. So they asked for 49 kilowatts of DC to be studied. They're actually approved for 40 kW, now that's AC. So you're losing about 9 kilowatts in the conversion from DC power to AC power. So the building runs on AC. As far as the load goes, I don't know. I did not hear back. I'll refer to Tim as far as that goes. But if they were studied at 40, that means the ComEd looked at their load basis and approved it.
Okay. What I'd like to do is have Walter give us a brief introduction, and then we could ask Tim to speak as well. So Walter, go ahead.
Okay. Chase Bank is working with Sunpeak, the vendor, to install the solar array on the roof of the bank building. Their plan is to have flush-mounted solar collectors arranged in a pattern on the roof. They would not be changing the plane of the roof with the addition of the solar collectors. There's actually two applications being considered here. One is a special use permit for the special accessory use, the solar garden function of the solar array. And the other application is a zoning variation specifically for the setback of the solar panels from the edges of the roof, whether it's the eave, the ridge line, or any other roof construction. The Plan Commission in the board report indicated that the Plan Commission recommended approval of both a special use permit and the zoning variation. The special use permit is subject to a number of conditions, not the least of which is that that the bank cannot place any solar collectors on the portion of the roof that faces Route 47. And that obviously will reduce the total energy that they can produce on the property. As far as the setback from the roof, the edges of the roof, the Plan Commission discussed it at great length, and in the end recommended approval of the zoning variation as requested. I believe Tim from Sunpeak is on the line, and if he has any other information or can answer specific questions, I'm sure he would be able to do that. So what we're looking for is direction from the village board so that we can prepare the necessary ordinances for the next board meeting.
I just want to, one thing out there, and I believe we've talked about this in the past, and the new technology, it would not be an issue with planes flying in because they don't reflect the sun. I know that that's kind of close to the pattern of the planes flying over, so I want to make sure we're not reflecting anything back up that would affect pilots coming in.
That's correct. That's actually a requirement of our zoning ordinance.
Okay.
That they have to be non-reflective.
Okay, Allison, can you unmute Tim so we can include him?
I did. So Tim, you can unmute yourself if you want to make comments.
Good evening. Thank you.
Hey. Go ahead, Tim.
I was just saying good evening, so I can address any questions that you might have.
Okay.
I guess
Go ahead, Jim.
No, I was just going to say, I think that, a big concern here for me is the fact that it's it really is, it is a four-sided building. There's traffic that goes all the way around the bank. And so as far as aesthetics, you know, we have parameters for our residents. And yes, while it may be taken off that front elevation facing westbound, it's still very visible throughout and around the entire building. So that is a concern for me. It's hard to say because you support green energy, but at the same time, you worry about the last time we discussed this and solar energy in general and panels and fading and damage and the building potentially being vacant that Jim brought up. But I don't know if anybody's given any thought to the fact that this is, you know, people are driving all the way around this building all the time.
Yeah, I have some comments. It's been my experience, and I think all of our experience, that thankfully the village does hold higher standards on building aesthetics and general appearance. And I think most village residents appreciate that. And I know I certainly do. As our commercial corridor does look, it looks nice, you know, compared to others. The color of the roof is grayish, taupish kind of color, and obviously we're looking at a picture there. Fortunately, it's not blue because that looks stands out pretty strong. But you know, certainly it's a different color. The shingle roof is a different color than the panels, so it will be noticeable. But thankfully, it's not like we're looking at the picture there. I guess, you know, would something like this been approved or considered when a building was coming to apply for a permit? You know, would we have allowed a double colored roof? Things like that. Because if we approve this, likely, it opens the door for obviously many others to follow suit. So, I'm certainly fine with parts of the roof being having solar panel as long as they aren't that visible. But I've driven around it just today again, and it certainly is very prominent on all four sides visually. So I guess when I just take a step back, I know how we're trying to hold as we continue to build to construct around here. We're holding things to a higher standard, and I think this goes, in my opinion, backwards. So that's my opinion and thoughts.
Any other questions for Tim or staff? Tim, were you able to look at the load calculations without the panels on the front of the elevation on the west side of the building? Will it still meet your energy requirements?
So I can tell you the size of the system as it was submitted will not use all, or will not supplement all of the required load of the facility. So any reduction would be just a reduction of the energy used on site, essentially.
Okay.
Although I do not have specific load information.
Jim Ecker here has a comment on that. Go ahead, Jim.
Yeah. Can everybody hear me okay?
Yeah.
Okay. So when you look at the schematics, there's two arrays that are being suggested or proposed on here. So when I took, there's an array, I want to say when you're looking at the front of the building, one on the right side, there's 4 panels there. That's about a 3 kilowatt reduction. In the middle, it's array number 8, and it's a 25 kilowatt reduction. And then part of array 6 is another 3. So it's basically 8.25 out of the 49. So it's about a 16% reduction by not allowing it on the front. So just to bring awareness.
So I had a question on the setback from the eave. The normal requirement, is it 5 feet? Is that correct?
You're correct.
And they are asking for a 1 foot
Yes.
Okay. And they're also asking for having the west side covered, which would be essentially the side facing 47, the front, more or less, correct?
Yes.
Okay. I am very pro green, but I do absolutely agree with Jim on this. I do not like the idea of setting the precedent of saying, yeah, go 1 foot as opposed to 5 feet. That's a very significant change. And whereas I really wouldn't have a problem with it on the sides that don't face 47 if they had the 5 foot setback. But I don't, I think it's a bad precedent to set to have it on the side that faces 47 when we don't allow it for a residential. So that's my thought.
Walter, do you know what the setback is on the elementary school in town? That 1 foot or a 5 foot setback?
No, I don't.
Be worth looking at. The school in Jen Shields has solar panels on it, and I can't remember myself if it's 1 foot or not.
Could there, and I'm just throwing this out there for the expert, when we talk about 1 foot versus 5 foot setbacks from the eaves, I know that first 1.5 feet or whatever usually is like a snow and ice shield when they're putting roofing up. Would that affect any kind of snow and ice shield that's put down underneath the roofing if you put it that close and cause, damage to the building through water leaking in or, ice pushing back up in there, being as you're that close to the edge?
The anchors that are used on this type of racking utilize a metal flashing that slips underneath the tiles or the shingles.
Okay.
So it really shouldn't interact with the ice and water barrier other than with the lag bolt penetrating through it. We haven't seen any adverse effects from that in our experience.
Okay.
What I'm hearing is, I don't know if the board has consensus as to the right direction. Sounds like we all might need to do some more research by looking at other projects in the area. I think Mr. Pat, I apologize, Tim needs to evaluate if they could even do the project, if they would meet the 5 foot requirement, because that would seem to remove quite a few panels. And if we're just removing the panels on the west side now, if you're removing 5 feet all the way around, that could make a significant change where the project isn't viable. So, is there anything else that staff and the consultant should look into to bring back to the next meeting? All right. Well, we'll table this item. We'll go out, do some research, and ask that, see if it's even viable if the 5 foot is removed. I can't say if there's a consensus one way or the other at this point in time, but something needs to be evaluated. Okay? Great. Thank you. Next on the agenda is discussion on the American Rescue Plan. Brent? Or Matt? Sorry.
Yeah, actually, this is a Matt one.
So this is kind of just an update. I know there's been a lot going on with it and being approved, but it's more just a discussion to update on how it's going to work and some of the logistics, and we'll continue to update as things progress. Since this has been sent out, nothing has changed from that side. So essentially what happened, March 11th was signed into legislation, the American Rescue Plan. It creates coronavirus state and local funds that totaled about $1.9 trillion. So that's broken up between states, the District of Columbia, local government, territories, and tribes. So of those, the 130.2 billion has been divided between cities and counties. 65.1 to metropolitan cities and 65.1 to counties. And those are all based on population, and those are going to be sent by the Treasury. For the metropolitan cities, which is what we are part of, they broke it down into cities over 50,000 in population and cities under 50,000 in population. The under 50,000, which is what the village is part of, is 19.53 of that 65 billion. Those monies are capped at 75% of the most recent approved budget as of January 27th of 2020, which is when all the relief and the pandemic dates go back to. So that would be 75% of that budget, which is our fiscal year 1920 budget, which what we'll get to is way more than our current allocation. So the Department of Treasury had 60 days to send the allocated money to the state, and then the state will then distribute the money within 30 days to the local municipalities based on population. The state can file for up to 3 extensions, and as far as I'm aware, they have already filed for 1 extension of that money. So it can take up to 120 additional days from the time the state gets it to get to the local municipalities. Up until this date, the Treasury still has not come out with any guidelines. They have not approved any or sent any on how they're going to treat this money. They have given some updates from the state and other local government organizations on how they read the legislation, not necessarily meaning how the Treasury is going to interpret the legislation as how we do. But they have given some ideas on those, and a lot of them go back to how the CARES funding was, but the American Rescue Plan funding is a lot broader than the CARES funding. So the one thing that they did put is when it gets to the state cannot change the allocations of how much local governments will get, and they cannot add additional requirements for the funding. So whatever the Treasury comes out as, that is what the guidance is. And in the past with the CARES funding, it kind of went to the state and the Treasury, and then the counties were able to kind of mimic if they wanted to and clarify the Treasury stuff and interpret it their own way. In this case, they cannot change that at the state level. So like I said, the village's current allocation amount is about 1.22 million. Nothing has been confirmed because that is also being completed by the Treasury as well. We will get those funds in 2 separate tranches, so 2 different distributions. Again, I explained it could be up to 120 days after the state gets the money, and as so far as we are aware, they have not even received it yet. But they've already filed their extension for their distribution. The second distribution will come 1 year after the first distribution. That is the earliest we would be able to receive the second distribution. They should be in 250% installments. Those funds have to be expended by December 31st of 2024. So just to kind of go on the information we've received from the state level and other local governments on the eligible uses, the first is basically to follow most of the guidelines from the CARES funding. There is some additional eligible expenses, and I'll kind of talk about those. So first is to respond to the pandemic or its negative impacts. You can assist households, small businesses, and not-for-profits, and to aid impacted industries such as tourism, travel, hospitality. In the past, you have not been able to directly do the small business portion. That was a big discussion during CARES funding. County was handling that, but that is a new eligible expense in these funds. Premium pay, if you were paying premium pay for eligible essential work. There is a new provision for government services to a reduction in revenue due to the pandemic. So that's going to be relative to the revenues you collected in the most recent full fiscal year prior to the emergency. So prior to that January, it's going to be based on those numbers. Again, no real guidance on how they're going to do this. There has been talk of quarterly reports due to the Treasury to prove those funds. but we're still waiting on the Treasury to release those. And then the last one that is currently ineligible expenses to make necessary investments in water, sewer, and broadband infrastructure. So with the uses, there has been two not eligible restrictions that they have done in this, and one is offsetting either direct or indirectly a tax cut made since March 3rd of 2021. So that generally will be your property taxes if you abated or rebates that cannot supplement those. And the other is being deposited into a pension fund. So it cannot be take that money and fund your pension fund liabilities. So as of right now, we do know that they are going to be requiring some type of periodic report to the Treasury for those with detailed accounting of the uses. So that's kind of an overview of that plan and what we know as of today. Is there any questions regarding this?
Well, does anybody have any questions from that? I think it's good information.
Yeah, and we will bring it back to the board for more discussion as more things are released or told to us as a local side. But as of right now, there hasn't been too much that has been released.
Okay. Thank you, Matt.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, staff reports. Chief Rollins.
Good evening. Just a couple of things. I know with the warmer weather, we've seen a number of calls coming in, an uptick of calls of speeding up in the residential area. So we're going to start deploying our speed trailer and our speed signs around through town. We already have 4 locations that have requested it, and then we'll just create a list and keep moving it around at a couple weeks at a time. So you'll see them in different neighborhoods. The other thing to be aware of, and a number of us sat through a presentation through the Metro managers this last week or 2 weeks ago, I believe it was, on lights, body, camera, and hopefully not in action. There's been some other legislation that is moving through different levels through the state government that, body cameras may, even though they're not required until 2025 for our size of a community, it may be beneficial moving it forward sooner based on some of the legislation that may be coming down, taking away qualified immunity against the officers, and having that video footage might be important to help defend the officers or the agencies. So we'll keep you abreast of that. We've added a few more members for the Nixle throughout the community, but it's probably just under 20 members since the last time the board met. So we'll push something out pretty soon again, just as a reminder. So that completes my report. And if there's any questions, be happy to answer them.
Yeah, is TRICOM going to come up with a package or anything that we could participate in for body cams?
Sean, did you ask if TRICOM was going to come up with anything?
Yeah.
No, their function is more towards the 911 dispatch, so they're not in that arena. So body cams are not part of the dispatch center or the use of the ETSB funds, which is more for dispatch centers. So we'll be looking for grants that may be offered through the communities or through a vendor. But right now there isn't, to my knowledge, there isn't anything that's been pushed out. So we're all jumping through hoops right now. Just we're hoping some of the legislation is just talk and it doesn't make its way out of the committees. But we saw at the last hour in the middle of the night what happened on this last reform. So.
Yeah, well, from what I've heard is that it's the video storage and the redaction of just individuals that are in the camera. Got to have a person on staff that's probably not a full-time job, but you're going to need somebody because it's more than a part-time job. So I don't know if we start to look at a group or if there's a consortium that will want to work on this together. It seems like something needs to be done to make it efficient.
Yes.
Okay. Any other questions for Chief? Walter?
Well, let's see. Since the department report was distributed to you, we completed another sweep of the community for signs in the right of way. The other news I'll share is at Prairie Point, we completed our final occupancy inspection for the facility last week. But I don't want to give anybody the impression that occupancy is imminent. There's still a large number of things that the owners need to complete before we can issue the occupancy in the building. They're aware of what the issues are. They have indicated to us that they're working to resolve those issues and provide the information that we've been asking for. But until we get that, as well as they make the corrections that we found in the final occupancy inspections, they're not going to get occupancy. So all I can say is it's on the horizon, but it's not imminent.
That's a good sign. That's good. Chris needs to be complimented for all this time and energy spent on that project.
Absolutely.
Okay. Then is your staff back with COVID? Did you have?
Well, no. The short answer is no. I'm hoping to get back to the office tomorrow. We've got one staffer who got inoculated had an adverse reaction to the vaccine, and another is completing the mandatory isolation period from a positive test. So if not by Friday, definitely next week, most people will be back.
Thank you. Okay, any questions for Walter? Okay. Matt, did you have anything else to add?
I did just have one thing. I know in my report I talked about attending the IRS and DCO webinar regarding COVID tax relief credits. At the time of that, local governments were not eligible. They were one of two organizations that are not eligible for those types of relief. Since then, I have received an email that was sent from McHenry County, but they received a response from the National Conference of State Legislators regarding the COVID tax relief in the American Relief Plan or Rescue Plan. And what they are reading through it is that local governments are becoming eligible for those tax credits for FFCRA. It's not going to be retroactive. It will be beginning April 1st through September 30th of 21. So we were not eligible. It's not going to be retroactive. But from what they have read, it is going to be eligible going forward from April 1st to September 30th of 21. Again, that's from this National Conference of State Legislators. No legal or Treasury guidance yet on that. Again, we're still kind of waiting on that, but we may become eligible for some of those credits going forward.
Okay. All right. Any additional questions for me? Okay. Tony.
Okay, thank you. Happy to report that there was a kickoff meeting with the CMAP electronically for the Municipal Pavement Management Project. We went over the scope and the schedule, and the contractor is all set to collect the pavement data between April 15th and May 7th. We're going to put out information about the type of vehicle that's going to go around town. They call it a high-tech multifunction vehicle for pavement evaluation. So it's going to be a van with all kinds of cameras and equipment on it. So we'll distribute that information through the website and our email distribution list. So I'm looking forward. I'm really excited about this payment management program, and they expect the plans for the payment management to develop by August of 2021. So by this August, we should have a plan in place.
Okay, well, that's good to know. Great to see it. Don, have we heard anything, Walter, from the consultant on the comprehensive plan?
No, CMAP staff is still revising the scope of work internally, and they are not prepared to start the project yet.
Okay, all right. So, Tony, you bring us good news that things are moving forward.
Yes.
Okay. Brian.
I just want to highlight from my report that our understanding is Ryan Homes is a contract purchaser for the vacant single-family lots in Settlers Ridge. And we were told that they were scheduled to meet with the Homeowners Association, I believe, this week to introduce themselves and talk about, the specific plans they would have for the homes they hope to build there, and that they're going to reach out to village staff following that meeting to start the conversation with us. So we're certainly, pleased that there's another builder interested in the subdivision, and also pleased that they understand how important it is to reach out to the current homeowners and involve them in the process.
Well, that's good news. Good to hear. Okay. Any questions for Brian? Okay. Trustee comments. Rick?
I have nothing at this time.
Ryan?
Nothing at this time. Thank you.
Okay. Heidi?
Nothing at this time, thanks.
Jen?
Nope, nothing to share. Thank you.
Ted?
Nothing from me.
Sean? Sean here. Can't hear you.
Are you muted?
You don't have any comments? No, okay, all right. President's report, I asked Tony to look into maybe getting IDOT to widen Galena Boulevard east of 47 to around 56. So he put in a question or a comment to IDOT to have it moved out a little bit. So.
Oh, you know what? Before we finish up, Sean, and I know, Walter, you've been out sick. I had talked to Tony earlier in the week. Just as a reminder, I wanted to mention it tonight again, that driveway coming out of Dunkin' Donuts onto 47, huge pothole there. It's been there for weeks and weeks, and it's very, very hard to avoid it. It's stretching across the whole opening, turning southbound onto 47. Have we notified them already? Is there a timeline to get that fixed? It's going to start damaging wheels. It's pretty big, pretty wide, and pretty deep.
The ownership was notified. I'll get a ETA.
Okay.
Okay. All right. That was the only president's report I had. Any public comment? We have Ms. Woods, Mr. White, Mr. Flint, and Mr. Jones. Any comments? Going once. Public comments going twice. No public comments. Okay. There's nothing else. May I get a motion to adjourn?
I will make that motion.
Second by Trustee Cook. Roll call, please.
Trustee Montalto?
Aye.
Trustee Cook?
Aye.
Trustee Heron? Okay. Trustee Lendy?
Aye.
Trustee Conan?
Aye.
Trustee Walter?
Aye.
Meeting adjourned. Thank you, everyone.